Good day. In this tutorial, I'm going to be doing a dory in a bed of water. Simple little piece, working with a basic wash in the background with cobalt blue. Just keeping it light and airy, trying not to overthink it or overwork this piece. The theme is more translucent than textural. I'm working with a little bit of Payne's gray in that cobalt blue, just a touch, really just a touch, keeping the white of the paper to come through. Did a basic line of low mountains in the background with just a Payne's gray and then a little tree line in front of it. And now I'm coming into the water just to outline my dory and give a basic wash. Going to be adding some yellow ochre to the foreground because it's a little bit of the reflection from my puff clouds in the sky there, ever so subtle. Again, keeping in mind working around the whole piece as the water is drying, be it that this is a small piece. I'm going to be working through it pretty fast, as it's drying, manipulating it best I can. Here I'm using a burnt umber and alizarin crimson together with a tiny touch of Payne's gray to give the shadow of that reflection, I should say, of the tree line behind. And I'll emphasize that a little bit more. And if you notice it's dripping down, my drafting table is at a slight angle, so everything does move down, but it's the table at that angle is best for me when I paint. And then I'm coming in with pretty much straight Payne's gray and a little bit of burnt umber to emphasize the tree line in the background in front of the hills behind that. Always keeping an eye on that sky because it does its thing in every painting. Every watercolor wants to move around and do things that I don't necessarily want it to do, so I have to pay attention to that. Coming in with the same coloring for the reflection on that tree line, just subtle, making sure that it's a little bit wet on the paper so that it runs a little bit and gives a more natural reflection. And then I'm coming into the boat to start to outline that and emphasize its shape and keeping in mind the shadows on that boat. Working again at my palette is pretty simple on this one. As I said, burnt umber. I have some raw sienna, yellow ochre, cobalt, and Payne's gray. And that's pretty much it for this palette. When I'm working small like this, sometimes it's difficult to work the little details in a boat like this because one stroke can mess up the whole thing. So sometimes when it's a little too wet, which this one seemed to be, the paper or the area around the boat was just a little too wet, so I really should have waited a little longer to go back into it because it started to just kind of mesh together. And I noticed that my shadow was looking a little bit off on the reflection, so I went back in with some more cobalt blue. Decided that I needed to put a little more depth into that water. But again, this whole scene is supposed to be a very light, airy piece. That's my goal for the day with this one. So I'm trying to be aware of that as I'm painting and not overwork it. It's easy to go in and just keep going darker and darker. So sometimes it's best to just have a theme in your painting. And you can see when I went into the center of that dory, it just kind of all blended together. So, you know, I'm better off to just leave that be for a bit, let it dry a little bit, then come on back in. So I'll just spread out what I have, but I really should just leave it alone. It's funny when I come into these tutorials and I realize when I'm watching it after I've painted it, things I should have done differently. It's a good exercise to watch a video of how you're painting things, to see how you're doing them right and sometimes not so great. So going back into the clouds just for a little more interest, and I had a little bit of water stain there, so I just wanted to, you know, get rid of that. In person, I think it shows up a little more than on this video. Some of the little flaws that happen, or maybe they don't, maybe you see them all, but I don't know. Either way, I felt the piece needed a little bit of extra work in the clouds, so I just went back in and again, it'll dry a little bit lighter, so I'm not too worried about it. And I'm going to have to go back into my boat now that it's dried just a little bit in my shadow and just start manipulating that paint just a little bit. It's a very simple piece, you know, and sometimes this is where it's so small a piece you just need to go in with a lead pencil and colored pencils and just give it a quick touch up. But here I'm going in with the Payne's Gray for the final touches on the shadows, and doesn't need much, and you see how small my brush is, just to give a little reflection. And obviously I need to go into the center of the boat and work that too. I am using some of the zinc white to kind of move the blue around a little bit, but the straight Payne's Gray here just to give a couple of defining shadows inside the boat. Doesn't take much when it's this small. Trying to bring a little bit of the color from the dory down into the water and ground the piece. I feel like I say that in every painting, but you definitely need to do that with paintings, is locate them on the paper. Tried a little white pencil. That didn't do anything, so I let that be. And then I'm just coming in. I'm gonna give a little more pigment to the foreground, just to make it pop a little bit more. And that's just with a tiny, tiny touch of Payne's Gray with the cobalt. And still keeping it simple and light, but just needed a tiny bit more. And you notice not covering all of what I had on before, and that little bit of light under that layer I just put on is just a nice little touch. To, as I often say, use every layer you've gone with. You know, show a little bit of it, even if it's minuscule, and that makes a little difference there. So just going to come in with my touches for the final shadows. But yeah, nice little gentle piece, not too difficult, kept it simple, and that was the theme. I hope you've liked this one. Pick up a paintbrush and paper and get out there and paint. And I hope I see you in the next tutorial. See you in my next painting. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you like and subscribe. And have a great day.